Hi everyone, in this video we will see how to use Excel to check if multiple conditions are true before giving a result. For that we will use the and or functions. The basic syntax of the and function is you say and give multiple conditions to check. Similarly, the syntax for or is or and then you give multiple conditions to check. This table shows how and or functions work in Excel. So let's assume you're checking for two conditions. Now and will return a true only if both the conditions are true. Even if one of the conditions is false, as in this case or in this case, and will return false. If both the conditions are false, and will return false. So for and to return true, both the conditions must be true. On the other hand, or requires only one of the conditions to be true for it to return true. So if A and B are your conditions, this is true, this is true, false. Both the cases or will return a true. But if both the conditions are false, then or will also return false. The main difference between and or is and requires both the conditions to be true for it to return true. Whereas with or function, even if one of the conditions is true, it will return a true. Let's see a few examples to understand how and or can be used. So here we'll say the admission criteria is age should be greater than or equal to 18 and attendance should be greater than or equal to 75%. We will check for the condition. We'll say and it takes multiple parameters. My first condition is I'm checking if the age is greater than or equal to 18. In this case I have entered 20. Second condition, I'm checking if the attendance is greater than 75%. 75% is 0.75 and in the data I have entered 85%. So when I enter, it returns true. Now instead of 20, if I write 10, it should return a false. The condition of age is not met. That's why and returns false. Make it 20 again, it makes true. Now we will see an example of the or function. I'm checking for eligibility. So if the score is greater than or equal to 90, or if you belong to the sports quota, then you are eligible. Even if one of the condition is met, you will be eligible. So we will use the or function. You say is equal to or, and then again it accepts multiple conditions. Here my first condition is I'm checking for the score if it is greater than or equal to 90. In my second condition, I'm checking if the sports quota is yes or no. Said yes. So the score criteria does not meet, but the sports quota criteria meets. So one condition is true, so then or should return true. Even if one of the condition is met, or will return true. But if I make this also no, both the conditions do not meet, hence or returns false. If I make this 95, one condition will be true, so or will also return true. So this is how you use and or function. We'll see more examples now. Usually you use and or function with the if statement. You would rarely use and or function all by itself. So here I'm using and with if. So these are the subjects and a child must pass in all the subjects to pass. And this is the condition that I give. The passing mark is 50. So I'll say if within that I'll give the and function. I'll check the marks of each of these subjects. I'll check if maths is greater than 50, science is greater than 50, English is greater than 50. If a student gets marks above 50 in all of this, and will return true. So if true, then show pass. In this case, all the marks are above 50. But if the marks of even one of the subject is less than 50, and will return false, in which case if will show fail. So I'll make this 45, fail. You see and returns fail because one of the criteria does not meet. Similarly, you can use or with the if statement. In this case, we are calculating employee bonus. So we are basically saying a person gets bonus only if sales is greater than 1 lakh or if the rating is excellent. In which case I'll say if, after which I'll use the or function and then I'll check if sales is greater than 1 lakh or if rating is excellent. Only one of this condition has to meet for or to return true. So if true, if will show bonus. If or returns false, if will show no bonus. In this case, both the conditions do not match, hence it returns no bonus. I'll make this 1,50,000. You see it changes to bonus because now one of the conditions is met. Sales is greater than 1 lakh. So the or will return true and if will show the first message bonus. So this is how you use and or function with the if statement. We'll check a few more examples. Loan eligibility. Is income greater than 50,000? Is credit score greater than 700? So if these conditions are met, then only you get a loan. So we must use the and function. So we'll say if, we'll use the and function. We'll check if income is greater than 50,000. Second condition will check if credit score. Now if both the conditions are met, and will return true, and if will show eligible, else it will show not eligible. In this case, only the income criteria is met. The second criteria will not meet because I have put 500, so it should return not eligible. Income criteria is met, credit score criteria is not met. So if I change this 500 to 800, you see it becomes eligible since both the conditions are now met. I'll check for discount eligibility. To get a discount, you should either be a member or your purchase amount should be greater than 5,000. So any one condition should be true. So we can use or. Here I've said member is yes, purchase is 7,000. I'll say if. I'll use the or function. First I'll check for, I need to check the value with the wrong cell reference. Check if it's a member. I need to check if the purchase value is greater than 5,000. So if any one of the condition is met, or will return true, and if will show discount, else it will show no discount. In this case we get a discount because we are saying member is yes and purchase amount is 7,000. Both the conditions are met. If I change member to no, he should still get a discount because the purchase amount is greater than 7,000. If I reduce that to 4,000, now he won't get a discount because he's not a member and his purchase amount is less than 5,000. Not even a single criteria is met, hence no discount. Even if a single criteria is met, he gets a discount. Now you can also combine and or within your if statement. So here, this looks a bit complicated, but it is not. Basically, you're using an if statement. Within that, you're saying and. This is your first condition. And in your second condition, you're using or statement. So basically what you're saying is, to be eligible, you need to be at least 18 years old. And you must be a resident of India or Nepal. So here, I'm giving age as 20 and nationality is in India. So in the if statement, you say and. First condition you're checking for whether age is greater than or equal to 18. The second condition you're checking the nationality of the person. So it should be either India or Nepal. I'll use or. I'll check the value whether it is India or Nepal. In this case the data says India. So or will return true. Age I've already given as 20. So for this AND statement, both the conditions are met. If will return eligible. If I change this to 15, not eligible because we are looking for both the conditions. Age should be 18 and resident should be India or Nepal. So 20. And if I change this to Nepal, if I change it to Nepal, it should be eligible. I did a mistake in the formula. Okay. Or F31 is equal to India, and again F31, take the same value. F31 is equal to India, F31 is equal to Nepal. So it shows eligible. Now if I say US, it will be not eligible. So this is how you use and if function in Excel. How to use it with if function. We also saw how you can combine and or and use it within the if function. So now some common beginner mistakes when you use and or, especially with if function. As you saw, there can be multiple brackets. So first obvious error is that if you don't give the matching brackets, it will give an error. If I miss this end bracket, it will give me an error. Similarly, there's a bracket here. If you miss that, Excel will give an error. When using and or even the if function, if you are checking for some text value, you should give that in quotes. If you miss the quotes, it will give you a wrong value. Move this, yes. It gives a error because Excel won't recognize it and you will get the name error. Always give quotes for text values. Also make sure that you give the commas at the right places and requires commas for each of the conditions. Then if also requires commas for its 3 arguments. So pay attention to the commas and give the right numbers of commas. When combining and or, it may seem a bit confusing in the beginning. So just double check your logic after you have combined and or to make sure it's right. So these are the common beginner mistakes when using and or with if function. So that's all in this video. Here's a small practice challenge for you. So for membership to a particular club, let's say the age must be greater than 18 and your income must be 50,000. Let me know in the comments how you will use the if function and the and function to know if someone is eligible for membership. Thanks for watching the video. If you like the video, do subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.